My name is Erak Simsson and I've been invited here to speak at the Site Care 2016 regional meetings which are taking place up and down the length and breadth of the country. The theme for this year's roadshow is about building and winning sustainable teams. My presentation this evening is all about and based around Leicester City Football Club, who achieved something pretty amazing last year, which was winning the English Premiership League title. And my presentation will be talking about the different elements that I believe helped them to achieve that goal, based around a model by a chap called Patrick Lencioni. He wrote this book about high-performing teams called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. So those 5 components then are, at the bottom, trust, conflict, commitment, accountability and results. And if a practice can integrate those within their setup, then they should be able to go on and basically achieve the sort of results that Leicester City have done against some of these major players like the Man Uniteds, the Man Cities. Teamwork is going to be your ultimate competitive advantage. All of the concepts I'll be covering will apply to every member of the optical team, from the receptionist to the dispensing optician, through to the manager, the optical assistant, the optom. All of them form their own team in their own right. So they've all got a role to play in terms of making that business a success. So applying those principles can actually help them to succeed and forge ahead in the marketplace. So let's start off with the first one then, and it's results. So Lencioni talks about results. You need to focus on growth because it helps to defeat the competition. It helps you to retain good people. You've got to set your targets. And those targets may be the number of eye tests that you do, the number of dispense, the average dispense price possibly, but you have specific targets that the whole team know you are aiming for. And once you have those targets in place, it means the whole team can move with confidence in the same direction. The second thing he talks about is accountability. Now, Lencioni speaks about peer-to-peer accountability being the most important. And when you have that peer-to-peer accountability, it basically means the load can be shared. So the goals of the practice are not purely down to the practice owner, they're shared between the dispensing optician, the practice manager, the optical assistant, the receptionist. Everybody has a part to play. Everybody can burden or take the burden of responsibility and share that out amongst the whole practice. He talks about commitment, Lencioni. The first thing about commitment is making sure the team have clarity about where they're going. Once they have that clarity, they can commit to the direction they're moving in. But every team member has to commit to that, because it only takes one team member not to be committed to the cause, and then what typically happens is that team member becomes a bit egotistical. It all becomes about them and less about the team, so they have their own agenda. So everybody has to have clarity in order to be able to commit to the team effort. Is conflict good? Conflict is required, it's necessary, it's a good thing. But what does conflict look like? What does it look like? Conflict. Is it a punch-up? Is it a dust-up in the back room? Dio and Optom coming out having a dust-up? Is that the conflict we're talking about? Is it sometimes? That's a rough practice. What's your practice called? Conflict is about people being able to disagree with something, but also able to have lively discussion about a particular topic without feeling they're intimidated. But it has to come from a place of where it's not mean-spirited. And when you have that, people can quite happily discuss a whole range of topics without fear of being told they're wrong or they're scared to speak up. And Lencioni speaks about a need for you to be open about your weaknesses and making mistakes, and being able to put your hand up and say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. So if you talk about trust then, trust has to come from the 2 types of trust. You have predictable trust, which is where the practice manager, the owner, would expect his staff to turn up on time, right place, right time. The sort of trust that we're looking for is one that comes from vulnerability, where a team member is able to say, you know, I don't know, I'm not sure, can you help me out? You're better at this than I am, can you maybe give me a helping hand? But that vulnerability, that whole kind of ethos has to start off with one person, and the person that has to develop that ethos in that sort of environment is the leader of the team, which more often than not is going to be the owner of the business. So just to recap the model then very quickly, it's where we started almost. We spoke about building right at the base there, trust. You've got to build that. That's got to be built up over time, trust. It doesn't come overnight. It takes time. We talked about predictable, we talked about from vulnerability. It takes time to build these things. Mastering conflict. It'll take you time to master conflict. Again, it's not going to happen overnight, no matter how good a fighter you are over there. Commitment, you have to work on achieving it. You have to embrace accountability. It's not the easiest thing in the world to be held accountable, because it takes energy, doesn't it, to be held accountable? You've got to work at being held accountable. Not the easiest thing in the world, but if you do it, you're going to find getting your results to the top becomes far easier. Focusing on them results will become far easier.